Yo guys, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are doing fantastic as usual. And we're back here developing our beloved to-do application. And in the last episode we got some really nice functionality. We actually got drag and drop. Can you believe it? We actually used a really nice library called Svelte DND action, and that helped us with just a few lines of code to implement some amazing DND drag and drop functionality. So if you haven't checked that video out, I definitely recommend you doing that because this video will build upon that. And in this video we will actually be implementing some real data. So we're actually gonna get the same functionality like we had before with the to-do items component, where we can, edit tasks, we can remove tasks, and we can do things with the task, and they will also persist. But, currently we actually have just some dummy data just to, demonstrate how powerful Svelte DND action is. But what is this to-do application if we can't actually have some real data and save that data? So that is something we're going to be looking at today. We also created this really nice status property that we're going to be utilizing now to actually give our tasks a status, and then based on that task status we will put them in different lists. So we can save them, persist them, and based on that status we will put them either in planned or in progress or completed. So I feel like we should also give this board here some headers. I feel like you can't really tell what you're actually moving them to currently. So we're buying some milk and we're buying some milk. They're kind of repetitive in some cases here, but it's just dummy data anyways. But I guess we'll add a header here so that you can actually tell what you're moving them to. So that should be hopefully pretty straightforward. With just some nice flex, I believe that would be very easy to implement. So just like we have flex 1 here to stretch these columns. Maybe we should already start thinking about a more general approach, since maybe we want to add more statuses later, or maybe allow the user to create their own custom status. So I guess we can create a little bit more general approach that is a little bit easier to change later if we were to implement something like that. So we can just create like an array, I believe, for the names at least. So that we can generate them programmatically without having to, duplicate our code and write flex 1 in multiple places and stuff like that. So I guess we're gonna do something like const statuses. So this will be kind of strange because we already have some kind of model for this. We already have kind of like a type for this, but I think we can actually extract this to its own type. Wouldn't that be cool? So we can do something like status type here instead. And if we create our own type, I think this is called type alias or something. I'm not really sure. Not a TypeScript expert, as maybe you can tell, but export type status type, and then we do something like this. And this will actually create like a new type, a custom type, which is, this string. This is just OR based. So it will be a string, either the explicit string planned or the explicit string in progress or completed. So let's just try if we can do something like a status type array. So I don't think we can actually specify here to TypeScript that we want to implement this for all statuses. So I guess we just have to do that. But I guess we get some kind of highlighting or validation here that they're the only allowed status types. So that is kind of nice at least. So it's somewhere cleaner code. So we can do something like planned, and then we can do in progress and then completed. So this will be all of their current status types. I'm not really sure if we can do this another way somehow with maybe getting this at runtime or something. I'm not sure. I guess we can experiment with that later if we want to refactor our code. But for now, let's just try this out. So these are all the available statuses in our application. And then for each of them, we want to do each statuses as status. And then we want to generate a new divider here, which will be flex 1 actually. We actually want to create a flex container around this so that we can actually have flex on it, of course. So now we can actually put that in here, I believe. So if I just do something like status, there we go. Isn't that amazing? All right, so I actually didn't think this through properly. We actually want to have like a localized or, a more human friendly. I guess we don't want to have in progress with a underscore. So we actually have to change this up, I believe. So we could make like an object for this instead. So just like I said before, we can actually use like a record for this to tell TypeScript that we want to have an object with a specified key and value structure. So in this case, we want the key here to be status type, and then the value here will be actually like the human friendly name. So if I do string here, then I can do something like this, I believe. So status type, this will be planned. So if I try that out now, yeah, so now we actually get a problem now because we can't really each over an object. And I think the easiest way to do this is actually to use object.keys, because then we get the keys of the object that we are iterating over, and then we can just get it by, indexing. So if I were to do something like object.keys here, we actually get the keys as an array or iterable or something. I'm not really sure what it's returning. Yeah, so it just returns here a string array. So in our case, we want to have that as status. We can do something like, status, I guess. And then we can do statuses at that index. So that will be status. There we go. So now we actually get that human-friendly name, which is a lot nicer than before. So I guess here we can have some nice text styling as well. So text to Excel or font bold, and then we can do text center or something. There we go. Isn't that nice? And then I guess for this, we want to have some kind of margin top here. So margin top 8, maybe a little bit less there. So margin top 4, margin top 2. Yeah, 2 looks about right. So now we actually rendered some headers there. Isn't that amazing? So the next step, I believe, here is to actually kind of connect some data. And now we actually change the structure completely. We're really not really dealing with that original array that we were working with. I don't think we actually have that anywhere, but we have a task array. We don't have that anymore. The real structure here will actually be something different. The one we created here, where we have columns. So I guess we can create some new models for this, I believe. So if I were to make it like a model for this, how does this look? I guess we can just copy it over and see how that will look. So if I just make a quick comment here for that, and then we can just create that based on that structure. So if I do export interface task board or something, task column, I guess. So, and then I believe we can just do something like status, and the status here will be status type, which will be, whatever this type is. And since we already have it localized, we have this nice object here, we actually don't have to specify a text here. We can just get that like we did over here in the header. So that should be pretty easy. And then we have items, and that should of course just be our items array of tasks. So it's not that big of a difference, but it definitely gets very different when we are going to be implementing this later. So now we got that. So this is a task column, and can I change this out now? Let's try it out real quick. So if I do something like task column, so it will be an array of task column like we have here. And this is completely broken out because we actually don't have proper tasks here. So can I actually do something about this real quick? Do we have some dummy task? I guess from to do item create we can get this. Oh, it's completely broken now. Yeah, so I guess we want to set that for now. Yeah, there we go. So let's copy that over here and see if that can work out. So if I do something like that, and then I give it a title as well. So buy some milk, of course. ID planned here. Okay, maybe that is not working. If I remove that text here, I guess we can just, why is that not working? Okay, it's supposed to be status, of course, status, nothing else. There we go. We actually get undefined here, and since we're just rendering this completely bogus here. But let's try now if I can copy this over for all of them. There we go. Now let's see if we can actually change this up here. Let's see if we can actually make this a to-do item already. But we do have a lot of things tied to it, so it will probably not. But at least we can bind the data. We don't need the events just yet. So let's just try binding that data. So if I do bind data, and this will be item, let's see if that works. Nope. It completely crashed here. Cannot have duplicate keys in key each. Okay, so where does that come from? Since this is UIDv4, we should not have any duplicate keys whatsoever. This is also unique here, we can tell. So I'm a bit confused about this. Oh, yeah. So this should just be status. It actually complains about this because it will be undefined for all of them because we don't actually have that property anymore. But if we change this to status, it should work. And let's see if that works. Oh my goodness, we actually get that original task card that we built. Isn't that amazing? Now, of course, this will not work. We have not tied any data to it. Oh, well, some of it will work. All that is contained to, the to-do item itself will work, like this, I guess. But not these buttons, which are actually using event dispatchers, which we have not bound yet. But that is amazing. We got a long way. We can also notice that the styling is really bad here. It got some weird padding around it here. I'm not sure what that is about. I guess we're doing something. Yeah, okay, so we're adding it inside of another card here. that dummy card is really bad for us here. So let's remove that. And there we go. It looks a bit better. You know, we still have a real problem here because so you can only have like a single word of to doing here. But other than that, it looks okay. You know, we got that nice original task card and we could hopefully move it. Yes, we can. So we can actually move that around here. It still works flawlessly. There's nothing to worry about. So that's really nice. We got that nice data structure working already. But now we also want to tie this to the actual status property here. So whenever I move this, I want to change the status here to in progress rather than planned. You know, all of them are completely invalid now because they're all completed, well, except for this buy some milk, but they're all invalid. So whenever I move this, I want to change it to the appropriate status here. I'm not really sure how we are gonna do that. I guess we can do something with Svelte D&D action. If it actually tells us what item we have moved and what status we have moved it to, or rather what column we have moved it to, then it should be pretty easy to just change that status depending on that. So let's just try here in finalize when we actually have, you know, made up our minds and dropped it somewhere. So if I do something like console log E, you know, we actually get the column ID here already. So we're already passing that in here. So we can actually do something with the column. I guess we can get the status based on the column. We would kind of want to have like a nice structure for the order of them because currently we only have indexes. So maybe I could do something based on the column. Yeah, so actually I can get the status from the column rather than passing in the index. So why not do that? So if I do column.status, we actually get the status from the column itself. And then I can actually give this an appropriate type. So I can do something like status. But then of course we also need to get the index if we're going to be updating it. I guess we can also pass in the index. We could also just find the column based on the status string, you know. We could just do columns.find and then based on that status string find the right column. But I guess we can be kind of efficient here. Since we actually have access to the index, we can actually just pass that in right away. So if I just pass that in as well. So this will be a number and then we want to have status, which should be a status type. And then we should actually have access to both the status and the index. So let's just see now if I move this over to in progress. Oh, it completely broke. L is not defined. Okay, something really weird is happening here. Oh, I mixed them up. Okay, I guess we're gonna change that here. So there we go. Now we have the right order there. If I move that now, does that work? And yes, it kind of did, but it went from planned and in progress. So something weird is happening there, in fact. It's sending the right one first, but then it sends another event from where it's coming from. That's kind of weird. So if I just, you know, if I just console log this event, maybe we can get some information about the why here. So if I move this now to in progress, we first get an event finalized and then we get another event finalized, of course. So in finalize, what can we tell from that? Why is it doing that? So I guess it will be in detail. So dropped into zone. We actually have the task ID here, so we can actually work with that. So it says dropped into zone. And then we get items. So we're finalizing that dropped into zone, but then we send another event which is dropped into another. Okay, so I guess dropped into another is called on the original, you know, where it's coming from. It's calling dropped into another to that one. So I guess we can just check if it's dropped into zone, and then dropped into zone is when it's actually coming to something, when it has, you know, arrived somewhere. And dropped into another is when it's leaving, I suppose. So, and yeah, that actually makes sense because we actually want to react to that. So we update the list. You know, if I move this item from planned to in progress, then planned needs to know about that so that you can actually update the array so that it actually gets removed. If I didn't do that, then I believe it will still be there. So I guess we can try that out just to see that effect. e.detail.info.trigger, and I check if it's not dropped into zone and I return here, then I should get a duplicate here, I believe. So if I move that right now, okay, so it doesn't seem to do that, in fact. I'm not sure how that works then. I guess we still want to react to that change. I guess it just changed it, you know, reactively. I'm not really sure how that works, but oh well. What I want to do here is I want to only set the status here when we have dropped into zone, since that's when we're actually entering the appropriate zone. So if I just check for that here underneath, I guess we still want this because that is the recommended usage. You know, they're not checking if it's dropped into, you know, that is how they actually present it in the documentation. So I guess we can do something like if it is dropped into zone, then what we want to do here is actually set the status of the item. So then we need to get the item as well. So I guess we actually got that from here in the detail, in the info, I believe. So info in here, we actually get the ID of the item that we have dropped. So we can get that. It should be pretty easy. So if I do something like e.detail.items, and then we find one by ID. So this should just be our task array. That should be no problem. And then we get the task here. So t.id equals e.detail.info.id. And let's just see if that works. If I do something like const task, and then I log that task here. Let's see if that works. So if I move that now, do I actually get the information? Yes, I do. I get to buy some milk. Okay, that's kind of bad. We don't actually know if that works. So if I do something like that, yeah. So if I move that right now, yeah, we can actually see that we got that there. So isn't that amazing? Now we can actually set the status here. That should be pretty easy. So if I just do something like task.status here should be the new status here. Let's see if that will work. I guess we can just debug that on the to-do item itself here. So I'm just gonna put it here inside of the span. I think we can just remove that real quick and see if it will work. So if I just remove that, we can see the status as the task name instead. If I move that now to in progress, we'll see if that updates. And yes, it did. Isn't that amazing? If I move it to completed, it will be completed. If I move it to planned, it will be planned. So now we actually update the status. Isn't that wonderful? So now I also want to handle, the initial state. We only want to save that into right array, but I'm imagining this should be, we're actually going to be saving that board into our local storage anyways. So it shouldn't be a problem. If we just have the right status from the beginning, then we shouldn't have a problem realistically. If the user isn't in their local storage and fiddling about with their status, then it should be planned. If I move it to in progress, then that should update. Then it will be in the right array anyways. I don't actually think that's such a big problem. So if I were just now to set them to the right status and I move them around a little, we should see that they are consistent in the right status. So if I do something like planned for this one, and this is in progress, yeah, I can just copy that there. So if I move that to in progress now, it will be in progress. If I move it back to planned, if I move it completed, if I move that one to planned, and I move this one to completed, planned, completed, you can see that it's the right status. If I move them all to in progress, you can see it's the right status. So now we're also updating the internal array here. We don't have to do anything weird here. It's already in the right array, I believe. So if I just were to console log the whole board here, which in our case should be columns, then we should see that they are in the right array. So if I just move them all to completed now, then they should all have the completed status and they should all be in the completed object here. So we can see these are empty, this is empty, and then we can see 3 items in this one. So it's completely right. And if we check them all now, we can see they all have the status completed. So we don't have to do much work. It's just working. Isn't that amazing? So that is the power of Svelte and Svelte D&D action for you. We only had to do this here to actually update the status. I'm not really sure if you can do some weird binding in Svelte D&D action. That would be super cool, but we learned a lot from this. We can actually see that we have some different trigger types based on different events happening within Svelte D&D action. So we can actually look for that dropped into zone whenever we are dropping a new item into a zone. And then we just update the status based on what that status is that we get from this, that we just get from our loop here. So that is super easy. I think this is pretty nice code as well. It's really straightforward and intuitive. If I just now do some quick styling, so I guess we actually want to change this back here so that we actually have full width, because we're kind of running out of space there a bit. So this is something we kind of need to focus a bit on design soon again, because it starts to look a bit bad. We're also overflowing here, and that is really, really bad. So I'm not sure how we are going to be handling that. I guess we just need to wrap the text here, or, kind of limit the text here. So it's going to be very interesting how we're going to solve this. If we're in a full layout, then of course it's going to work. So I guess soon we're also going to be looking at how to make our site responsive so that we can actually have it on a mobile phone. And in there, of course, you cannot have like a horizontal layout with multiple columns. That's not going to work out. We barely have any space even now with me having like a half screen. So we can tell that it's not going to work out. We need to change our layout completely in a responsive layout. So it will be interesting how we're going to do that if we need to have like multiple rendering in different structures, because, we cannot maybe we can actually not do that with CSS. We'll see how that turns out in that video. Now I'm just going to give us a little bit more space here. If I just remove that here, yeah, that should be fine. And you can see it looks pretty nice. You know, if I can move this now, I can see it's in progress, completed. Then we also want to make sure that we actually remove that and give it back its ability to show the nice title. So we're getting some nice repetitions of these things just by removing them. So text content, that should be data.title. And then we don't want to have any content of that span. So if I just do something like this, that should be fine. There we go, and we got our nice titles back. They just disappeared for a quick moment. If I can change that now, does this persist now? No, it doesn't, of course, because we've actually not bound any data here in app.svelte. We're just rendering like a to-do board, and it's based on this data. We're not saving that data anywhere. It is hard-coded, and that is something I feel like we should tackle as well in this video to make sure that the user can actually save that data somewhere. So if I were just to remove all of this default data, it will end up with an empty board. But I guess we don't want to do that. We want to have these columns, but we want to have empty lists for the items here. So if I just clear these instead, that is more what I meant. So then we can actually add to the items arrays here. Not, you know, we can still have our nice columns. So see, there's no difference here, of course, because there's no items, but we actually want to use this then so that we can actually get the column, the right column here planned in our case for to-do item create, so that we can add to the right column here. So I guess we can do that already. If I just export let columns, that should be fine, I believe. And then items here, we're going to be completely removing this. So, but I guess we can keep it for now. So bind columns, and that should be columns. And then we can create a new array here. So I guess we want to copy this over as well, since we're actually setting it in the other component. So if I just make that an empty array, or it doesn't need to be an empty array actually, we want to have that from app.svelte. So if I do that here, that should be fine. Now let's see if I can actually give that to item create so that I can add something to that one. So if I do something like bind columns, that should work as well. So if I go here now and export let columns, and this should be task column array. Let's see if that works. Then we want to set the right type here, of course. So task column array. That removed our warnings. Let's see now if I can do something here. If I do something like this, columns, and then we can do the first column here. This is kind of bad practice, I would say, because this is hard-coded now, but let's think about that later in our potential refactoring. So here we can do something like items, and then we can do something like items and reassign that. So like I said, we need to make sure that we're actually reassigning things in Svelte. Otherwise, Svelte doesn't know about it if we're just pushing or something like that. So we want to make sure that we're actually reassigning that. And let's just see if we can copy this code here and see if that will work. So if I just do something like columns at 0.items, but let's see if it works. So if I were to do something like this now, no, it does not work. Each only iterates over array-like objects. Okay, interesting. So where does this come from? To item, and each value here is columns. Okay, that did not work out at all. Let's see now, where does this come from? Is it actually breaking initially? No, it's only doing that when we add something here. Oh, now it worked. Okay, I guess it just broke temporarily, but now we can actually see that we can actually create a new task, and they will be placed in the planned column because that is where we plan them here. But this status is, like I said, completely wrong, so we want that to be planned here, of course. So if I move that now, I have no way of knowing what that status is, unfortunately. But I guess we can do something like this real quick. So data.status. And there we go. We can actually see that that works already. So if I move that, okay. So these first ones were completely broken. But if I move that now, yes, it seems to be working. Isn't that amazing? So now let's see if we can actually do some data binding here. It will get kind of interesting with this new structure, but let's see how we're doing this in to-do items here. So we have on title change, on completed change, and then we have dispatch edit and on delete here. So that should probably be fine. We're just doing some dispatching here anyway. So let's try that out in to-do board, I guess. So if I just copy this over here, and then copy over this. So we want to have the event dispatcher, of course. So if I copy that, And then we also want to have this on delete here. So that is just doing dispatch as well. And then import that, of course. Of course, we want to do the same here. So in app.svelte, we're doing loads and loads of things here. So all of this kind of needs to be bound here as well. And all of that is definitely not implemented properly. So we have like on edit and on delete, but not on title change, I believe, or maybe we do. On title, oh yeah, they're just event forwarded. So all of this kind of works. Yeah, edit, delete. We have twice. Okay, that is weird. We actually have on delete twice. I didn't even notice that, but yeah, we don't want to do that. Save to local storage. So we actually had a bug here that we discovered just now. That's kind of bad. Let's see if that works. So if I were to create a new task here and press the edit button, will that work? If I change that now, it did not fully work here, of course, because we actually do a lot with this items array here, and that is kind of the basis of everything here. If I were just to comment this out, we can see all of the dependencies here on the items array here that we're dealing with. So this is kind of a lot of work, I believe. So all of this depends on items. So I guess we need to remove the task file IO, and items here should be fine if I just change this up a bit. If I remove this here, do we have any items here? Yeah, so this is the only one. So we can just comment that one out for now. That should be fine for that one. And then we can remove it here. Then we have a lot more to go here. So we have on mount. We're doing all this loading. I guess we can just comment this out for now, since we're not gonna be doing that just yet. And then we have on task delete. And that will also be super interesting now, because we need to get the column based on the status. So I guess we have to do something different. We need to get the right column here based on the status string of the task. So we kind of need to create some kind of catch for this, so that we know if I have this status string, then what index does that correspond to? So we can do something like this real quick, a really quick and dirty solution, but we'll refactor this later. So if I just do the same thing, statuses, and then I make an object, then I do something like planned, and that should be index 0, and then I do in progress, that is index 1, completed, index 2. Then I can use that here, I believe. So if I do something like columns at, and then we have to get that task here. So we can kind of create a variable for that. So task is data here. Then we do task, then we do statuses at task.status. So we get the state, we get the index from the task status. And then here we can actually use items array, which should be the same thing really. So if I do items is items, and then we have to copy that there as well. And let's see if that will work. So then I guess we can use the variable here. So that task.id, and then we can comment this one out. And then for on task edit save, we should really do the same thing. So we just do the same mapping, but we get the task in a different way. So task, and then we do columns at items, and then we do this mapping thing, and we copy that over here instead. So items.map, and then we can comment that one out. Let's see if that works out. Did I miss something? Nope. So save to local storage. I guess we can comment this out. We're not doing the saving just yet. Let's see if that works out. So if I save this now, and if I press that edit button and I change it up and then save it, will it work? No, it won't. Task is null. Oh, okay. So this is edit modal. So this should be e.detail, I guess. So e.detail. Let's see if that works now. So if I create something new and then I save that, and yes, it seemed to work. If I do something like that, if I add a tag, does that work? Yes, it did. Isn't that amazing? So now if I remove that tag, yes. If I delete it, does it work? Yes, it seemed to be working. Isn't that amazing? So we actually kind of got some really quick data structure now. We're actually modifying the right state when we're saving something here, hopefully. So if I just save that now, we can see it kind of works. Isn't that amazing? So I guess the real test now is to actually see if we can save this columns array and see if we can actually parse it back in. then we will know for sure if we got the right data saved. So let's try that out, I guess. The only difference now, I guess, is that we want to save the columns array instead of that items array. So if I do something like this, and then JSON stringify, this should be columns instead. And then for the loading part, I guess we can just look at that. So data here should be task column instead, and then we parse that in, and then columns should be data. So let's see if that works. Okay, so it's completely broken now because I have some other data in my local storage. So I'll just remove that real quick in here. So if I just delete all of that and reload, it should work, hopefully. If I just move that over here, I change it up a bit, I add a tag to it, add some description, and then I reload. And there we go. That tag didn't work out though, so if I do that now, save. Oh, am I clicking somewhere else? Health, save. Yes, now we're saved. And then I move it over. Oh, that did not work actually. So that is interesting. That did not work for some reason. If I move that over, if I reload now, yeah, there is something weird there. There's something weird there. Oh yeah, we're actually not saving that when we rearrange it. So in this to-do board, we actually need to save to local storage as well when we do this finalize, of course. So I guess we're gonna create an event dispatcher, of course. So dispatch, I guess we can do something like on reordered or something. So yeah, I'm not sure, that's probably not the best name, but we can change it later, of course. So we can just do something like on reorder, then we just want to save to local storage. Let's see if that works. So if I move that now, if I move some of these over here and then I reload, yes, there we go. Isn't that amazing? Now we got that saved even when we reload. If I change with some content editable, if I change this to buy some cookies, and I reload and I complete these and I reload, and yes, it is persisted. Isn't that amazing? Now we're actually have some real data to work with that we are saving to local storage. Isn't that amazing? I'm really hyped about that. We got a lot done today. We got a lot of nice functionality going, and we got a lot of foundational work done today so that we can build upon and make an amazing to-do app. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Feel free to like or dislike depending on what you thought about the episode. And also feel free to subscribe if you want to be part of this community that I'm trying to build, where we can learn from each other. Feel free to share your to-do application in the comments, or if you have any questions or you caught me doing something stupid, feel free to share that in the comments as well. But other than that, see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.